Hello everybody. In the current affairs this week, the week ended 28th of September 2025. The sentiments on the Indian stock market and the Indian currency markets were disturbed on account of continued action by the US. It gave an indication that hurtful action from the US will continue one after another. As we all know, it started with imposition of 50% of tariffs on goods exported by India to the US. Then it was a show of special affection towards Pakistan, and last week there was an announcement that the H-1B visa fees for any new applications will be now to the extent of 100,000 US dollars per year, which is definitely going to impact the Indians and the Indian IT companies. This week, there was an announcement that there would be a 100% tariff on patented and branded drugs which are exported to the US. India basically does not export a lot of patented and branded drugs. Its major or practically all the exports of drugs and pharmaceuticals to the US are generic drugs. But it speaks of the kind of action which the US is imposing or looking at insofar as India is concerned. This impacted the Indian stock markets. Nifty 50 was down by 2.65%. Nifty mid cap was down by 4.26%. Nifty small cap in just 1 week was down by 4.76%. FIIs continued to be sellers, but this week in a substantial way they were sellers and they sold Indian stocks to the extent of 19,500 crores in just 1 week. DIIs tried to support the Indian markets by buying Indian stocks to the extent of more than 17,000 crores. The major sectors in India which were impacted were Nifty IT, which was down by around 8%, Nifty Pharma was down by more than 5%, and Nifty Realty was down by more than 6%. On the commodity market front, Brent crude crossed the 70 US dollar to a barrel mark and was up by more than 5% this week. Gold and silver continued their march of buoyancy. Gold in India was up by more than 3%. Silver in India was up by around 8%. The rise in silver prices is not just attributed to the fact that there is a safe haven buying of precious metals in this uncertain world, but it is also supported by the demand of industrial use of silver in production of materials for renewable energy, EV, and electronics. It is expected by several observers that in a short time silver will cross 150,000 to a kilo in Indian markets. Nasdaq and S&P 500 were modestly subdued. As far as the currency markets are concerned, the Indian rupee reached a record low of 88 rupees and 68 paisa to a US dollar. The reason for the same were naturally and definitely the impact of the trade tariffs imposed by the US, and on account of that the exports to the US that would be suffered. Then there is a fear for more and more action. Then to add to this trade related reasons, the selling by the FIIs in the Indian stock market resulted into an outflow of dollars from India to outside of India. This spoiled sentiment also affects foreign direct investments by global investors in India on account of this kind of action targeted by the US on India. Despite all these negative happenings on Indo-US trade relations, the underlying sentiment in India was quite positive for the reason that the IPO market was quite buoyant, and there were a series of IPOs where there was a very encouraging response from the investing community. The IT sector, as we know, is going to face a lot of challenges in India. But the emergence of a new segment in India, which is the Global Capability Centers, the GCCs, which basically carry out the back-end functions and also complex functions like R&D for all the major global companies outside of India, is developing very fast. Now there are 1,750 GCCs operating in India for the global corporations which are basically located outside of India. By 2024 end, there were 24 lakh people who were employed in this GCC, and they have been generating revenue to the extent of more than 64 billion US dollars. This revenue from these GCCs is expected to be 100 billion US dollars by 2030. Maruti this week was one of the most valued companies in the auto sector across the globe. It was the most valued, 8th most valued company, and its valuation was more than that of Ford, General Motors and Volkswagen. That is all for this week. Thank you.